Welcome to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. It's with great pleasure we welcome back His Grace Radhika Raman Prabhu, who is an international treasure, a representative of the Shri Guru Parampara from the Brahmabadva Gaudiya Sampradaya, a star in the academic world, and luckily for us, a regular speaker here at ISKCON of Silicon Valley. Thank you for joining us online. If you're within 20-mile radius, get on down here, please. And thank you very much, all of you who have come out this morning to hear the next session from Radhika Raman Prabhu. Please let's give him a warm ISV welcome. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so very much for that very, very warm welcome. I'm the one who's particularly fortunate to visit ISV and that all of you, that you repeatedly welcome me here. I'm so very grateful, particularly to Vaisheshika Prabhu and Mother Nirakula for their wonderful hospitality and the community that they have built here, the example that they set for all of us, including for myself. So thank you all so much, very grateful. We'll begin with a short kirtan, singing Jai Radha Madhav. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Jashodanandana Vraja Janarandana Jashodanandana Vraja Janarandana Vraja Braja Janarandana Jashodanandana Braja Janarandana Jashodanandana Braja Janarandana Jashodanandana Braja Janarandana Jamuna Tira Manachari Yamuna Jamuna Tira Manachari Yamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayo Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe Jayo Gauranitai Gauranitai Jai Gauranitai Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. The deities look so beautiful. Yesterday and today, I've only seen them for 2 days this year, but just incredible. How could anyone fail to be attracted to them? Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So thank you all so much, in person and online, for attending and for coming to the third part of the seminar for today, which is called Churning the Ocean of Scripture, Methods for Scriptural Study. And today we're going to move on to the third part of the seminar, which is looking into the actual practice of scriptural study. How do we actually do it in practice? So yesterday, if you recall, we talked about what does it mean to study? What is reading? And what does scriptural reading look like? And then we asked ourselves, well, what is scripture? And there we looked at how Srila Jiva Goswami defines what is the different pramanas and shabda and so on. In the course of yesterday, we also studied how our acharyas, who are really the pros at studying scripture, how they do it, and the lessons that we can learn from their practice as well. So many, of course, practical things were there, but today I want to focus more specifically on approaches to studying Shastra in a more down-to-earth way. So, let's see here. Let me just start by saying that the study of Shastra, scripture, should be a deeply personal practice, and all of us have to find ways that it works well for us, right? And we'll all have our approaches, our techniques. Krishna Kshetra Maharaj, for example, he loves making mind maps. So he'll take a topic and he'll connect it and he'll physically draw it out on a sheet of paper and structure it in different ways and connect it, and it becomes something quite extraordinary, actually. But that's how he organizes his thoughts and connects the dots, so to speak. Others do it in a different way. They take very careful notes and they organize those notes. And yet others create their personal booklets of favorite verses. So we've all got our techniques and we've got to all have our methods. And we should personalize the study of Shastra because it is a personal practice. Every one of us can and should have a personal relationship with Srila Prabhupada through the study of his books. We can get to know him, and just like any personal relationship, it is personal. We know him, we understand him in a particular way, he speaks to us in different ways. So what I want to present to you today is some general principles, things to pay attention to as we study Shastra, methods to do it, and also some things that have worked personally for me. But please know that this is something that we have to individualize in a way that works for us. So the first thing here I want to mention is that we've talked about spirals already yesterday. And this is it's an upward spiral where we study as something that we come back to over and over and over again. One of the things that we find in study tends to be very linear in nature. We want to study a subject, and then once we've mastered it, we want to move on to the next subject. And then we've mastered that and we move on to the next subject. And so things, whether you're looking at college courses or high school study, we tend to look at things in a very linear way and often in a very competency-based way. I'm competent at X, now I can move on to Y. And once I get competent at that, I can move on to Z. So Shastric study rarely works in that way. For the reasons we talked about yesterday, right? That it's a never-ending, ever-deepening process. So sometimes devotees, one of the most common concerns that devotees mention to me is that it's, I read and I can't take it in all. I forget. I read and then I forget. I read and then I like something and then I lose it. And so I try to take notes, but then I have to go back over the notes and I don't sometimes have time, or I lose the notes. So there's so many things that can go wrong, and it's a challenge. But we have to realize that in our first study of Bhagavad Gita, or in our first study of Bhagavatam, we're not going to get it all, right? We come back. This is a point that Hanumat Preshaka Swami makes many, many times, that it's an iterative process. We come back over that same point, and we return to it. We saw an example of this yesterday in Arjun's second reading of Bhagavad Gita, and how he came across the same point, same person, same book, same siddhanta, and very different realization as a result of it. So it's a lifelong process, and we come back over it. And memory is not merely reflected by our capacity to recall. That's how we think of memory. That's the sign of memory is, can you remember it, right? So, who was Dhruva's, what was the name of Dhruva's younger brother, right? So we want to be like, and then now we know it, and I have evidence that I know Dhruva's story. But recollection is only one kind of memory, and sometimes it's not even the deepest kind. There's different symptoms and signs of memory. But in the Vedas, memory is actually connected very deeply to buddhi, or the intelligence. Krishna says, smriti bhramshad buddhinasho, buddhinashat pranashyati. That memory is deeply connected. When memory is destroyed, then our intelligence becomes destroyed as well. And this is not just memory in terms of remembering who was Dhruva's younger brother. This is memory in terms of us holding it in at the level of the buddhi. And the buddhi is the deepest level of this material body that we have, right? Buddhi is so subtle that it serves as the bridge between the physical material body and the spirit soul, who's not material. It's that subtle. And so when we take it deep within ourselves, we may not be able to remember every little thing, but we have still been transformed by it. And that transformation is what is the goal of memory. That's the deepest form of memory, is the effect that it has, because then it becomes part of our DNA. We've been changed physically, psychologically, spiritually. We've been changed by that association with the personalities who are described in Shastra. And when we have been changed by it, now that memory is permanent, right? Because we have been transformed. Whereas you can recall something, not be transformed by it, and forget it, right? Or even you can remember it forever and not be changed by it. For example, I still remember Mary Had a Little Lamb, which is something you learn. And, maybe it transformed me deeply. I doubt it. It's one of those things that I just hold on to, right? Because I learned it at a particular age, and it just sticks with me. But that's not the memory we're looking for, right? It's good if we can get there. But we want the type of memory that'll sink so deep that it'll change us at a very deep level. So we ought not to be disappointed by the fact that recall is not there. For some people, recall is better, and for other people, not so much. And that's part of what our natures are, what our karmas are, what our capacities are. Just like some people are excellent at sports and some people are just terrible. at that. So we have different bodies, we have different psychophysical makeups. Very disappointed if we're not, one of those. The question really is, has it sunk in deeply? Has it changed us very deeply? And that is often described in scriptures as the real evidence of both memory and shastric study. So, yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha guru tasyaite katita hyartha prakashante mahatmana. That these truths of the Vedas are revealed to those who have implicit faith in Krishna and in the spiritual master as the qualification for knowing and for learning. Which leads me to my second point about assumptions about learning. Another key difference in educational philosophy from the Vaishnav tradition to what we think of as education in the modern world is that scriptural understanding requires not just an understanding of content, but a development of character. That development of character is both a certain degree of character is both a prerequisite and a product of shastric study, right? We have to have a certain mindset in order to approach scripture. There's one very nice quote from Prabhupada, a letter that he wrote, which I'll read a little later in a different context. But Prabhupada says there that because he's writing to a devotee specifically, and he's saying, you continue please studying Bhagavad Gita over and over again from many angles of vision in the association of the devotees in New York Temple. And he says, because you are sincere, or he says, if you are sincere, something like that, and because you are sincere and you are engaged in devotional service, your understanding will continue to grow. So he places a character as a prerequisite, a certain, as I was saying yesterday, disposition to study. And this is something that is actually incredibly relevant to our world today. We find that we can go out into the world and we can tell people facts about the world. And those facts don't have the intended effect that we think they will, right? So every box of cigarettes has a label on it that says, smoking is dangerous for your health, right? Every ad for alcohol says, drink responsibly, underneath it. So the facts are clear to many, many people, pretty much to anyone who can read. And yet we see that those facts have an effect on some and not on others, right? So the question then becomes, well, where's the slippage between the fact and the action, the fact and the transformation? And that has to do with the cultivation of character. If we have a disposition, a desire, first of all, and the requisite then willingness and humility to learn, then those things will have effects. And this is why Vedanta Sutra begins first by saying, Atato Brahma Jignasa. The word jignasa is a desiderative in Sanskrit, means it signifies desire. It comes from the root gnya, which means to know. And jignasa is the desire to know. Now, therefore, we need the desire to know about Brahman. And every acharya who comments on Atato Brahma Jignasa spends a long time explaining the word atha, now. The very first word, atato, atha, ataha, jignasa, atha, which means now. They spend time saying, well, when is now? When's now? It says, now let us inquire into the absolute truth. So when's now? And every one of them agree on this one point. Now means that when we have the right disposition, the right character, the right approach for study. Some describe it as a sense of exasperation with the material world, a desire to know something spiritual. Some describe it as a humility and a willingness and a desire to learn and to know. But everyone points to the fact that just facts, just knowledge, just content is insufficient, right? There has to be the right attitude towards the subject of study. Okay, so what is study like, right? What are the assumptions we bring into our Shastric study? One, this is going to be a spiral process. We're going to come around the same verses over and over again, And each time it's going to be a little higher. And each time it's going to be a little deeper. And each time it's going to be a little different. That we need to cultivate the right mood, the right disposition in order to ensure that that Shastric knowledge has an effect that is deeper than mere recall, right? We can memorize so many things, but if it doesn't sink in, then we're not achieving what we want, what we need to. So that's the thing that I want to begin with. Okay. Now, sorry here. Okay. Now, the question that I want to raise next is, I forget to move this on. So, this question that I foregrounded yesterday, that as we're studying the scriptures, we want to get the right meaning, right? This is called Siddhanta. Siddhanta Siddha means established in this context. Siddha means established, and Anta means conclusion or the end, right? So the established conclusion, Siddhanta. By the way, this word itself, Siddhanta, it indicates that a process has happened, right? This idea of the spiral, the idea that there's a process of learning. Established conclusion means that there was a process that we underwent to establish it. And this, in fact, is exactly how the Vedanta Sutra, this is exactly how the Upanishads, they teach, right? They help the student through a process. Think about it like this, think about it like this, try that. And now you know that you're the spirit soul, you're not this body. Now think about this, and think about this, and think about this. Now you know that there's the existence of a supreme self who is yet greater than us, right? That's the Paramatma. Now think about this, and think about this. So that process, and then we establish the conclusion. It is now established, Siddha, right? Siddhanta. So even the idea of process is embedded in the word Siddhanta, or conclusion. So we want to get to the Siddhanta. We want to get to the right meaning. And yet, we want space for many meanings, right? For the churning of the ocean of Shastra to continue to yield rewards at all times, in all phases in our life. So how do we balance the two? Now, let's first, for a moment, look at the challenge, why this is a problem. Why this is something that we actually need to pay attention to. This tension, this balance between the right meaning and many meanings. And I want to give you here an example from the Bible. And often it's much easier to see something in another tradition because it's a little more distant from us, right? When we see something out here, then we can observe it, and we can observe it dispassionately because we're not so closely involved in it. So I want to demonstrate to you this challenge of tension with this particular quote. This is from the Beatitudes. This is a section in the Bible, in the New Testament, where Jesus gives the Sermon on the Mount. This is one of the most famous and, frankly, one of the most beautiful speeches in the history of religion, where he speaks to his followers about a standard of behavior and character that he wants them to live up to. And they're in a section of the Sermon on the Mount, there's the Beatitudes, where he speaks about those who are blessed in the eyes of God. And the one line I want to focus on here is from the Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 5. And this is the King James Version, which is a classic translation of the Bible. He says there's a line before this. He says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And then he says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." Now, if we asked ourselves, and we, for a moment, put ourselves in the shoes of someone who knows nothing about the Bible or Christianity, and we looked at this and we tried to say, so what does this mean, right? What is Jesus actually telling us here? And we thought, well, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the poor, right? So I guess he's saying that if I remain humble, then I can expect either tomorrow or a few years down the road, I will become king of this earth, right? Everything. And I will be the king, right? And we might take it like that and become very excited to become humble so that we can now become kings. And no Christian ever reads this passage like that because it makes zero sense. In fact, it makes very little sense from practical experience either, because we find that humble people don't always inherit the earth, right? They often just remain poor and humble. So what is he trying to say? That understanding clearly just doesn't work. So the most common understanding for Christians is probably the idea that if we remain meek and humble, then we will be elevated in the eyes of God. And as we are elevated in the eyes of God, then during the Lord's second coming or towards the end times, this earth will be given to those who are dedicated to Him. Or, if not on earth, then in heaven, we will be elevated to the highest level by our humility, by our sense of poverty in terms of saying, yes, I am the lowest among the low, right? That will be our gift, not in terms of physical things in this world, but in something that is beyond this world, that will be ours. So that's often how this verse is explained. But there's other possible understandings here as well. So if we try to deepen our understanding yet further, and we look at the historical context in which Jesus said this statement, Jesus was speaking this to a group mostly of Jews. And at that time, the Jewish people were waiting for a Messiah, someone who would come and liberate them from the oppression that they were feeling, the persecution under the Romans. So he was supposed to be that Messiah, but the Messiah that many Jews were waiting for was not someone who said something like this, "Blessed are the meek." It was not someone who said, if someone takes your coat, give him your shirt as well. If someone slaps you on one cheek, give him the other cheek as well. That was not the person they were waiting for. They were waiting for a military leader, someone who would take charge and militarily destroy their persecutors, the Romans, and make them free. So if you add the historical context, if you understand what was going on at the time, this statement becomes even more powerful. Because now you realize, my gosh, when he's saying this, this is not just a beautiful statement for his followers to be humble. It is certainly that. But it's also something really dangerous, he's saying, very radical. It's something that no one wants to hear at his time, because he's asking them to turn the other cheek when they rather fight physically, militarily. But then someone really famous like Karl Marx comes. You know Karl Marx? The founder of the philosophy of communism. He reads this statement and he interprets it completely differently. He says, blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. He says, this is exactly the problem with religion. Religion is a tool of the powerful to keep the poor and the commoners in their place. If you are humble, I promise you, if you remain poor, I promise you in your next life, God will reward you. That way, my position as someone who's wealthy, rich, and powerful remains secure. Right? So he called religion famously the opiate of the masses. Right? And by that, he meant you give someone a promise for the future, you give them something that feels good now, and the rich and powerful can maintain their